Buckle up, because today we're diving into the quirky, daring, and downright fun world of vintage ultralights. These flying machines weren't about speed or power, they were about freedom in its purest form. From chainsaw-powered pioneers to toy-like creations that somehow soared through the sky, ultralights captured imaginations in ways few aircraft ever have. In this video, we'll explore their fascinating beginnings, iconic designs, and the legacy that still lingers today. The ultralight movement began in the early 1970s as a reaction to both soaring fuel costs and the dream of ordinary people to take to the skies without needing a full pilot's license. Aviation had long been seen as an expensive and exclusive world, but ultralights promised something radically different: simplicity and affordability. These were small aircraft, often home-built, that allowed enthusiasts to experience the thrill of flight without spending a fortune. At their core, ultralights were powered by tiny engines that produced barely enough horsepower to keep them airborne. Some early versions relied on 10 to 15 horsepower, the sort of power you'd expect to find on a lawnmower. Yet, with lightweight frames and wide wingspans, they could glide gracefully once aloft. Builders experimented with wood, foam, and plastic coverings, cutting costs while maximizing efficiency. For many, the attraction wasn't just practical, it was philosophical. Pilots felt they were breaking free from bureaucratic aviation rules and rediscovering flight as the Wright brothers once knew it: fragile, exciting, and close to the earth. Ultralights embodied a do-it-yourself spirit, with many being sold as kits. Hobbyists could spend weekends tinkering in garages, then wheel their creations into open fields for test flights. By the late 1970s, a movement was growing. Pilots gathered at air shows, swapping ideas and showing off homemade designs that looked like lawn chairs with wings. What started as an experiment had become a grassroots aviation culture. While critics doubted their safety and durability, ultralights represented something irresistible: freedom to fly for those who had never dreamed they could. And soon, one particular Canadian design would push the limits of creativity even further. The Ultraflight Lingers is one of the most legendary ultralights to ever grace the skies, and for good reason. Designed in Canada during the late 1970s, the Lingers turned heads immediately, not because of what it had, but because of what it didn't. Instead of a powerful engine like most aircraft, it ran on not one, but two chainsaw engines. That's right, each engine pumped out a meager 5 horsepower, giving the Lingers the combined muscle of a modest lawn tool. It sounds absurd, but here's the twist: the Lingers flew beautifully. Its secret lay in its construction. Ultraflight engineers designed it with ultra-lightweight materials and an expansive wingspan, combining the glide efficiency of a sailplane with the accessibility of a kit-built ultralight. The result was an aircraft that soared with minimal power, making it not only functional, but also revolutionary. The Lingers wasn't just unique in its engines. It introduced several firsts for ultralights: winglets for stability, an inverted V-tail, and full 3-axis controls, features typically found on much larger planes. Early models even had translucent mylar film stretched over the wings, creating a nearly invisible profile in flight. Pilots described it as looking like Wonder Woman's invisible jet, only slower and noisier. When Ultraflight realized their chainsaw-powered experiment needed more strength, they upgraded to Rotax engines with nearly double the horsepower. But by then, they'd already stocked warehouses full of small propellers. Their solution? Glue them together. The Lingers remains one of the only planes in history designed to fly with double propellers. Hundreds were built, flown, and loved. The Lingers proved a simple truth: you didn't need massive horsepower to experience incredible joy in the sky. It was innovative, accessible, and unforgettable, a cornerstone of the ultralight revolution. If the Lingers was quirky, the Mitchell U-2 was bold. Created by engineer Don Mitchell in the 1970s, this ultralight didn't just borrow from aviation history, it rewrote it. Mitchell had already made a name for himself working on the Northrop flying wing, and he carried that experience into the ultralight world. His vision was simple: give everyday pilots the thrill of flying a futuristic flying wing without requiring advanced training or deep pockets. The U-2 was lightweight yet sleek, featuring a bubble canopy and compact cockpit that gave it a sci-fi look. Its engine, mounted behind the pilot on a pylon, delivered anywhere from 20 to 40 horsepower depending on configuration. With its efficient wing design and impressive glide ratio, the U-2 became one of the most efficient ultralights of its time. In fact, it set an altitude record for ultralights under 600 pounds, climbing to over 26,000 feet, a staggering feat for such a small aircraft. But the U-2 wasn't without quirks. As with all flying wings, balance was critical. A miscalculation in weight distribution could turn a peaceful flight into a chaotic ride. Even the engine pylon had to be adjusted depending on the pilot's body weight, forcing flyers to carry wrenches along with their helmets. Despite these challenges, the U-2's folding wings made it practical and portable, easily storable in a garage or towable on a trailer. Over 1,000 kits were sold, though only a fraction were ever completed. Today, just a handful remain flying, with one proudly displayed at the Smithsonian. For those who dared to master it, the Mitchell U-2 offered a flying experience unlike any other, both thrilling and demanding. It stood as proof that ultralights could be experimental, ambitious, and even a little daring, while still capturing the spirit of grassroots aviation. The Sky Pup was aviation whimsy turned reality. Born from the imagination of a Cessna engineer who wanted an affordable, fun project outside his day job, this ultralight looked like something you'd find in a toy aisle. Crafted from Douglas fir, styrofoam, and fabric, it weighed little but carried pilots into the sky with remarkable ease. The goal was ambitious: build an airplane for under $1,000, accessible to anyone with basic tools and free weekends. Powered by small two-stroke engines producing 20 to 30 horsepower, the Sky Pup seemed fragile, yet pilots quickly discovered it was surprisingly stable. With a glide ratio of 12:1, if the motor cut out, it transitioned into a graceful glider. Its design eliminated ailerons, relying only on rudder and elevator, which made it unsuitable for windy conditions. Yet, in calm skies, it was forgiving, responsive, and joyous to fly. Despite its toy-like appearance, the Sky Pup was built tough. It could handle load factors up to 6 Gs, numbers rivaling small certified aircraft. Builders loved its simplicity. No fancy electronics, no complex systems, just pure, straightforward flying. The Sky Pup's very limitations reminded pilots what ultralights were meant to be: fun, cheap, and a little quirky. Around 300 were built, and stories of backyard assembly sessions and first flights filled ultralight magazines of the 1980s. It wasn't a record breaker or an engineering marvel, but it embodied the playful heart of ultralight aviation. For many hobbyists, the Sky Pup was their first, and sometimes only, airplane, and it proved you didn't need polished aluminum or roaring horsepower to have an adventure in the sky. Keep watching, because the next ultralight makes the Sky Pup look downright sensible. Few ultralights captured the eccentric charm of the 1970s like the Wing Ding. Designed with one goal: be light enough to carry a human, it tipped the scales at just 122 pounds. To put that in perspective, many motorcycles weighed more. Built with plywood, foam, and even cardboard in some early prototypes, it was as makeshift as aviation got. Yet somehow, against all odds, the Wing Ding flew. Its power plant? A 12-horsepower go-kart engine. Pilots quickly learned that while it could scoot along at around 40 miles per hour, climbing out of ground effect was a different story. Most flights were short, low, and cautious, with emergency landings possible in any nearby field or cow pasture. Fuel capacity was another issue, offering only about 15 minutes of flight time. In other words, long-distance travel was never on the cards. The Wing Ding also lacked brakes, forcing pilots to channel their inner Fred Flintstone, stomping on tires to stop. It was crude, it was laughable, but it symbolized the daring spirit of early ultralight aviation. Thousands of wing-ding plans were sold, though few were ever successfully flown. Fast forward to the 2020s, and enthusiasts resurrected the design as the Dingo. With modern materials and triple the horsepower, it transformed from novelty into a competent little biplane, proving even quirky dreams can evolve into something practical. The wingding may have been fragile, but it inspired countless tinkerers and reminded the aviation world that sometimes the fun is in the attempt, not the perfection. If the wingding was crude, the Deal XTC was the opposite, slick, modern, and ahead of its time. Pronounced ecstasy, this ultralight lived up to its name. Released in the early 1980s, it was packed with futuristic features, pre-molded parts for easy assembly, retractable landing gear, foldable wings, and even a canard design that made it look like something from a James Bond film. It was amphibious too, capable of landing on both runways and water. Powered initially by a 25-horsepower engine, later upgraded with a Rotax 447 boasting 45 horsepower, the XTC could cruise at 60 miles per hour and climb far better than most of its peers. It wasn't just stylish, it was capable. Builders marveled at its handling, while adventurers adapted it for everything from aerial photography to patrol work in the Philippines. One Australian even turned his into a floating film studio, documenting the Great Barrier Reef. The XTC made its big splash at Oshkosh 1982, where 60 kits sold almost immediately. Pilots lined up to buy what seemed like the ultralight of the future. But the dream didn't last. In 1983, an ABC special painted ultralights as dangerous death traps, sparking public fear and regulatory scrutiny. Sales plummeted overnight, and Deal shifted focus to component manufacturing, leaving the XTC to fade into obscurity. Today, prototypes rest in museums, relics of what might have been. The XTC deserved a brighter future, but its short life illustrates how fragile innovation can be when public perception turns sour. Don't go anywhere, because the way the ultralight movement nearly collapsed in the 1980s will surprise you. The legacy of ultralights is a fascinating blend of innovation, controversy, and nostalgia. While the golden era peaked in the late 1970s and early 1980s, their impact stretched far beyond those short decades. These aircraft redefined what it meant to be a pilot. No longer was flying reserved for those with thousands of dollars, years of training, and access to big airports. Instead, anyone with a few tools, some free weekends, and a healthy dose of courage could build and fly their own airplane. That democratization of flight remains one of ultralight's most enduring contributions. For many, ultralights represented more than just cheap flying machines. They were expressions of personal freedom. In the same way motorcycles symbolized independence on the road, ultralights gave pilots their own backyards in the sky. The simplicity was part of the appeal. No radios, no certifications, no complicated avionics, just wings, an engine, and an open sky. Pilots described the sensation as pure, unfiltered flying, where every bump of air was felt and every turn was intimate. Of course, their story wasn't without turbulence. The 1980s saw a dramatic boom and bust cycle. Media reports highlighting accidents painted ultralights as unsafe, causing sales to nosedive. Manufacturers folded, and many promising designs vanished into history almost overnight. Yet, enthusiasts never abandoned the dream. They adapted, improved safety, and worked with regulators to carve out niches where ultralights could survive. In the U.S., Part 103 regulations kept the door open for hobbyists, ensuring that ultralights remained a legal path into aviation without the burdens of full certification. Today, many original models still fly, cherished by collectors and enthusiasts who view them as time capsules of a daring era. Others have been reimagined with modern materials, efficient engines, and even electric power plants. The Laser has appeared in electric conversions, the Wing-Ding became the Dingo, and countless other designs have been reborn for a new generation. More importantly, ultralights inspired an entire movement of experimental aviation. They taught thousands of people that airplanes don't have to be complicated to be rewarding. For every backyard pilot who risked their first takeoff, ultralights planted a seed of creativity that continues to shape home-built and light sport aviation today. Their legacy isn't just the aircraft that flew. It's the spirit of adventure, resourcefulness, and fun that still lingers whenever someone dares to strap into a lightweight plane and take to the skies. Ultralights weren't just machines, they were symbols of freedom, creativity, and a little bit of rebellion. From chainsaw engines to toy-like designs, they proved flying didn't need to be fast or glamorous to be unforgettable. Though media scares and regulations dimmed their golden era, the spirit of ultralights lives on in every garage builder and weekend pilot who dares to dream. Slow, cheap, and fun. Sometimes that's all flying needs to be.